where curiosity curls up beside calm and the soft hush of wonder settles over the world like nightfall. Tonight, we're wandering into the wild woods of time, into jungles not just of trees, but of ancestors. We're chasing a question that's puzzled more than a few midnight minds. If humans evolved from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys? It's the kind of question that seems simple, but echoes deep, like the call of something ancient. A vine that tugs not just at science, but at story, at who we are and where we came from. Maybe you've wondered this once in passing, or maybe it's always quietly hummed at the back of your mind. A little riddle nestled among fossils and family trees. But before we swing from those evolutionary branches, may I ask, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Is the sun rising, or are the stars already whispering above your window? If this gentle journey gives you a moment's peace, a pause from the noise, a space to stretch your thoughts and soften your senses, I'd be ever so grateful if you liked the video, perhaps subscribed, or shared it with someone else looking for a lullaby made of science. Now then, let your breathing slow, let your body soften, and let's begin. Because somewhere between apes and ancestry, between genetics and grandmothers, lies the quiet, complicated story of why we didn't descend from monkeys, and why they're still here anyway. We humans have a habit of placing ourselves at the centre of things. We do it quietly, unconsciously, like a reflex. Like the way a cat always seems to know where the warm spot on the bed is. It isn't arrogance, exactly, just familiarity. We see the world through the mirror of ourselves, and everything else becomes a kind of reflection. Smaller, simpler, behind us on the timeline. We look at monkeys and see mischief. We see cousins, clowns, shadows of what we might have been. They swing through trees and we sit in traffic, and somehow we imagine that means we've won. But there's something quietly unsettling in their gaze, isn't there? That flash of recognition, that tilt of the head, that echo of thought in their eyes that feels a little too close, like looking through old family photos and realizing you still make your great-grandfather's expression when you're annoyed. And maybe that's why the question lingers. Why didn't they turn into us? A whisper of discomfort behind it. The suggestion that maybe evolution isn't a staircase, and maybe we're not the final step. Because here's the thing. We like to see progress as a path upward. One straight line from simple to complex, from crawling to standing to skyscrapers. A great unfolding story with us as the crescendo. Monkeys, then humans. Easy. But that's not quite how nature writes. Evolution doesn't care about plot twists. It doesn't aim for elegance or ego. It's not a ladder, it's a tree. A wildly branching, tangled, beautiful mess of a tree. And with just one twig on one branch, sprouted in a particular direction, because it happened to work. And so are they. Every creature alive today, from blue whale to bumblebee, is the product of the same ancient process. Adaptation, survival, selection, carved by the same slow chisel of time. Monkeys didn't become us because they're becoming something else. Because evolution isn't about climbing towards some ideal. It's about fitting into the world like a key in a lock. Still, we can't help but measure. We compare. We rank. We look at a chimpanzee and think, not quite there. We look at a gorilla and think, close, but not quite. But to them, we're the strange ones. Soft-skinned and loud, awkward in the trees, running on concrete instead of claws. We forget that to other animals we are the anomaly. The hairless ape that builds machines, talks to satellites, destroys forests, writes lullabies about science. The way we frame the question, why didn't they evolve into us, assumes that we are the destination, not just another stop. But maybe that assumption says more about us than it does about monkeys. There's a kind of comfort in thinking that we're the goal, that everything before us was leading to this, but nature isn't building to a climax, it's improvising. Every species, including us, is a version that happened to work for now. That truth is both grounding and a little disorienting. It humbles us. It tugs us gently off the pedestal we carved for ourselves and invites us to look sideways, not upward, to see the branches, to see the orangutan in the forest, the howler monkey in the canopy, the macaque bathing in a snowy spring, and recognize that they are not behind us. They are beside us. Parallel experiments in survival, just as valid, just as ancient, just as wondrous. We feel the need to ask the question because deep down, we want reassurance that the way we live is better, that civilization and shoes and smartphones mean we've made it. But evolution has no favourites. It only asks, does this work here now? In a forest, long arms and flexible feet are brilliant. On a savanna, upright walking is an edge. In a lab or a library, brains help. In a snowstorm, fur is a miracle. What's clever in one place is useless in another. We don't have tails, but they don't have war. We have Wi-Fi, but they have peace. And sometimes, when the world feels too sharp, too fast, too fractured, a part of us wonders if we really evolved past them at all. There's a reason monkey videos go viral, a reason we laugh at their antics and linger when they sit still, eyes blinking slowly in thought. We see them, and something ancient stirs. Not pity, not pride, recognition. They didn't become us, because they didn't need to. They are not failures, they are survivors. We didn't outgrow them, we diverged, and somehow, knowing that we share not a path, but a route, makes the world feel a little more connected, a little more alive. So if you've ever asked that question, if the words, "Why are there still monkeys?" have ever fluttered through your thoughts, you're not alone. But maybe now the question feels different, less like confusion, more like wonder. Because what we're really asking is, how did we all come to be so similar and so beautifully not the same? And that, dear listener, is a question worth asking slowly. Long before we had biology textbooks, before fossils were named and theories took shape, humans tried to explain the living world in stories. We looked out at the creatures around us, the birds, the wolves, the monkeys, the strange elegance of a snake's movement, the way a chimpanzee holds a stare, and we did what we do best. We imagined. In myth after myth, animals were never just animals. They were messengers, gods, tricksters, ancestors. They wore our faces, our fears, our fire. In some cultures, the line between beast and being was not a line at all. It was a circle, a cycle, a breath shared between forms. In the myths of the Yoruba people, Orisha spirits walk the earth wearing animal skins, shifting between shapes like rain turns to mist. In ancient India, Hanuman, the monkey god of strength and devotion, leapt across oceans, lifted mountains, and whispered to kings. To call him less than human would be to miss the point entirely. He was divine because he was monkey, not despite it. In some indigenous North American traditions, animals were teachers, each one a living metaphor, the bear for power, the eagle for vision, and the monkey, often a symbol of joy, of mischief, of adaptability, a nod to the idea that cleverness comes in many coats. In Japanese folklore, monkeys were mountain spirits, sarugami, capricious and clever, sometimes dangerous, but never dismissed. To ignore them was to court imbalance. Even in Christian medieval bestiaries, those illustrated guides to morality and monsters, the monkey was more than just a beast. It was used as a mirror, a reflection of human foolishness, of vanity, desire, play, a creature too close for comfort. You see, throughout human history, monkeys have been many things, but they've never been just animals. Because deep down, we've always sensed that strange nearness. The way their hands curl, the way they grieve and learn and play tricks, the way a mother macaque rocks her baby, just as you were rocked once, we noticed. And we told stories. Of course, not all the stories were gentle. As science emerged and empires grew, our relationship with monkeys, and with the idea of evolution, became tangled in new, uneasy ways. In the 19th century, when Darwin first published On the Origin of Species, the world was not quite ready. The notion that humans might share ancestors with apes was, to many, unthinkable. Blasphemous even. Caricatures began to appear. Darwin himself was drawn with a monkey's body, as if to mock the very idea of kinship. Science was whispering, but ego was shouting. Still, some cultures embraced the connection. In parts of Asia, monkeys were venerated, respected, protected. In Hindu temples they still roam freely, eating offerings, stealing snacks, reminding visitors of the divine mischief woven into the world, and even in the West, as understanding deepened, the imagery softened. Planet of the Apes aside, we started to see apes not as failed versions of ourselves, but as cousins on a different path. Not steps behind, but steps beside. It helped, too, that they were undeniably charming. Coco the gorilla, learning sign language, cradling kittens and crying when they died. Washer the chimp using words to ask for hugs. Even the mischievous monkeys in YouTube videos, grabbing phones, mimicking tourists, flashing teeth that somehow look like smiles. We began to see not just behaviour, but personality. Not just instinct, but intention. And once that door opened, once we admitted that they were not so different from us, 1,000 quiet questions slipped through. If they can love, if they can mourn, if they can laugh and lie and learn, then where do we draw the line? And why do we need one at all? Because here's the truth whispered through centuries. The idea that monkeys should have become us is rooted not in biology, but in bias. It imagines a single track of progress, a ladder with us at the top. But ladders are human things. Nature prefers trees. Wild, branching, glorious trees. Evolution doesn't promise better, it promises fit. What works, stays. What doesn't, fades. And what's brilliant in a rainforest might fail miserably in a desert or a city or a boardroom. The macaque that fishes for yams in Japanese hot springs has no need for philosophy. The gibbon that sings love songs through morning fog does not long for spreadsheets or space travel. They are living, thriving, continuing stories. And their survival is not a prequel to ours. It's a parallel tale. Of course, there are cultural echoes of this confusion, even today. You might hear someone say, if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? And it sounds innocent enough. But beneath it lies a misunderstanding, a relic of a time when people thought species transformed one into another like coins changing hands. As if evolution were a magic trick. One moment an ape, the next, abracadabra, a human. But that's not the rhythm of nature. Evolution is not a flip of the switch. It's the dimming and brightening of many lamps, over millennia. Species don't step aside to let others through. They adapt to their own niches, or vanish. So when we wonder why monkeys are still here, the answer is simple, because they're doing just fine. And perhaps, in the quiet of night, when we feel far from our roots and unsure of our place, it's comforting to know that our cousins are still out there, chattering in the canopy, swinging from limb to limb, reminding us that not every path leads to the city. Some lead back to the trees, and not because they're behind us, but because they never needed to leave, because what they became was not a failure of progress, but a triumph of presence. In mythology, in history, in culture, the monkey remains a mirror, reflecting our movement, our mischief, our minds, and maybe, just maybe, our need to ask why they didn't become us is less about them and more about us wondering if we've truly become who we're supposed to be. So, if monkeys didn't turn into us but we share something in common, what did happen? Let's look not through the lens of myth or metaphor now, but through the quiet microscope of science. Still gentle, still slow, still wrapped in wonder. First, a clarification. The phrase, humans evolved from monkeys isn't quite accurate. Not because it's wildly wrong, but because it's blurry. It's like saying you evolved from your cousin. You didn't. You both evolved from a shared grandparent, a common ancestor. And that's the core idea. Humans didn't evolve from modern monkeys. We and monkeys both evolved from a long extinct ancestor, a species that lived millions of years ago, that was neither quite human nor quite monkey, but something older, something in between. Picture a tree again. Not a Christmas tree, neat and narrow, but a sprawling old oak, thick with twists and tangles. Your branch, our branch, is just one among many. Humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, baboons, macaques. We're all twigs sprouting from shared limbs. Those limbs are called lineages, and the places they split are called divergence points. Think of them like whispered farewells. Millions of years ago, a population of early primates split. Some stayed in the trees, some began to walk, some drifted into forests, others onto grasslands. With time, with isolation, with mutations and pressure and change, those separate populations became distinct, new shapes, new minds, new paths. One of those branches would eventually become us. But evolution doesn't erase the others. It doesn't demand that one survives instead of another. It simply allows what works to continue. So modern monkeys didn't miss the mark. They're not behind or beneath. They're exactly where they need to be. The current form of their own long and winding lineage. The term monkey itself isn't even scientific. It's a human convenience. A word we use to group together certain primates based more on looks than on strict biology. In evolutionary terms, we divide primates into a few broad groups. There are the prosimians, like lemurs and tarsiers, more ancient, more isolated, still dancing through moonlit forests in Madagascar. Then there are the monkeys, split into New World and Old World varieties. New World monkeys live in the Americas. Think capuchins, spider monkeys, howlers, tail-swinging, tree-loving acrobats. Old World monkeys live in Africa and Asia, like baboons and macaques. More social, often ground-dwelling, with expressions that can seem startlingly human. And finally, there are the apes, which includes gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, bonobos, and us. Yes, humans are apes. We share more genetic material with chimpanzees than a chimpanzee does with a baboon. We are not cousins of the apes. We are apes, just a peculiar, upright, story-writing variety. Our lineage, hominini, split from that of chimpanzees somewhere between 5 and 7 million years ago. That's not yesterday. But on the evolutionary clock, it's just a few ticks back. We walked away, literally, started walking upright. It freed our hands, changed our hips, allowed our brains to grow. It was the beginning of a very strange experiment in being. But remember, chimps didn't stay the same. They evolved too, in their own direction, under their own pressures, toward their own kind of brilliance. They are not snapshots of our past. They are snapshots of their present. Our common ancestor with chimps was not a chimp, it was something else, now extinct. A creature who'd seem equally strange to both of us now. So when someone asks, if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? It's a little like asking, if English came from Latin, why is Latin still around? Because language doesn't evolve in a straight line. Neither do species. Multiple forms can branch out from the same root, carrying pieces of that past forward in different directions. Some fade, some flourish, some become poems, others remain etched in old stone. It's not a hierarchy, it's a chorus, and each voice, each species, is a note that tells a piece of the song. But let's turn now from branches to blueprints, because if our question is, what separates us from monkeys? Then part of the answer lies in that coiled thread inside every cell, DNA. Humans and chimpanzees share about 98.8% of their DNA. That's closer than a wolf is to a fox, closer than some species of birds are to each other. It's a number that startles some people. Because how can so small a difference make such a large divide? The answer isn't always in the letters themselves, but in how they're used. Which genes are turned on, how often, how early, how long. You and a chimp may carry near identical recipes, but your developmental chefs work from different instructions. The human brain, for instance, doesn't just grow larger, it grows longer. Our childhoods stretch out, our skulls take time to fuse, and in that extra time our brains get more chances to wire and rewire, to soak up language, to ask unanswerable questions. We also differ in regulatory genes, those that tell other genes when to act. Think of them as the conductors of a symphony, same instruments, very different music. And then there's our anatomy, subtle changes that shaped whole new possibilities. We stood up. Not all at once, not suddenly, but slowly, awkwardly, experimentally. Over millions of years, the ancestors of humans moved from knuckle walking to upright walking. Bipedalism. Why? It's still debated. Maybe it was to free our hands, to carry food, to hold tools, to cradle children, to see over tall grass. Whatever the reason, walking upright changed everything. It narrowed the birth canal, which meant babies had to be born earlier, more helpless, more dependent on care. So childhood lengthened, so social structures deepened, so language began to form, so thought had room to stretch. From standing came sharing, from sharing came speaking, from speaking came stories. One change spiralling into the next, like ripples moving through time. But this didn't happen in isolation. We weren't lone pioneers of evolution. Our ancestors coexisted with other hominin species. The fossil record shows a rich, branching bush of early humans: Australopithecus, Paranthropus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and many others who lived, thrived, and vanished. We were never the only ones. We just happened to be the ones who lasted, and even then we didn't evolve in a vacuum. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, shared the earth with other humans for a long time. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, we even interbred with them. Which means that if you're of non-African descent, you carry some of their DNA. You're not pure anything. You are a living mosaic, a story stitched together by ancient meetings under unfamiliar stars. So, evolution is not just a matter of one species replacing another. It's a dance of encounters, of migrations, minglings, extinctions, survivals. Sometimes species split and drift apart. Other times, they loop back together, leaving traces in each other's blood. It's messy. It's beautiful. It's real. And yet, through all this science, we still carry metaphors. We still speak of higher and lower animals, though biologists wince at those words. There is no evolutionary escalator, no chain of being, no ladder of progress. There is only adaptation. There is only what works here now for this niche, this climate, this challenge. So when we ask, why didn't monkeys evolve into humans? The honest answer is, because they didn't need to. They evolved into monkeys, just as we evolved into us. They adapted to their environments just as we did to ours. They climb trees with joy and ease. We climb ideas, sometimes with more clumsiness than grace. But neither path is better, just different. Think of it this way. Evolution doesn't play favourites. It doesn't reward cleverness for its own sake. It rewards survival. And monkeys, by that measure, are a resounding success. Millions of years of thriving, of grooming and foraging and leaping and loving, of raising young and solving puzzles and navigating forests with a grace we lost the moment we stood up. In fact, if Earth were wiped clean tomorrow and life began again, there's no guarantee anything like us would reappear. But monkeys, they just might. Because what they are works, and in a way that's what evolution honours. Not ambition, not complexity, not intelligence for its own sake, just fitness, in its quiet, local, deeply specific form. You might say evolution is less a journey and more a balancing act, and monkeys, with their quick minds and nimble hands, have kept their balance beautifully. By now, the picture is starting to take shape. Not a line from monkey to human, but a forest of paths, each shaped by its own sun and storm. But what is evolution, really? Not the idea, not the metaphor, but the actual engine, purring along in the background of every living thing. Let's begin softly with the basics. Evolution, in its essence, is change in a population over time, specifically a change in the frequency of certain genes, the stretches of DNA that act like tiny molecular recipes for building life, and the driving forces behind it. There are several, but let's walk through the forest gently, one step at a time. Natural selection is perhaps the most famous. The idea, first whispered by Darwin and Wallace, is both simple and astonishing. If some individuals in a population have traits that help them survive or reproduce better in a given environment, they are more likely to pass those traits on. It's like life tapping a quiet rhythm on a drum. Not a conscious choice, not a grand plan, just a slow statistical tilt toward what works. Over generations, those helpful traits accumulate. A thicker fur in colder climates, a sharper beak, a longer leg, a slightly better memory for where the good fruit grows. Not perfection, not progress, just persistence. But natural selection is only one brushstroke. There's also mutation, the source of all genetic novelty, tiny changes in DNA that happen naturally as cells copy themselves, or in response to radiation, chemicals, even sunlight. Most mutations do nothing. Some are harmful. But now and then, one creates something useful, a slight advantage, a new possibility. Think of mutations like seeds scattered by the wind. Most fall where nothing grows, but some take root. Then there's genetic drift, the randomness in reproduction. Sometimes a trait becomes more common not because it helps, but simply by chance. A storm wipes out part of a population. A few individuals happen to survive. Their genes, lucky not superior, become the future of that group. This is especially powerful in small populations, where every roll of the genetic dice has a bigger impact. And let's not forget gene flow, when individuals move between populations and bring their genes with them. Like two distant rivers suddenly connecting through a flood, gene flow allows for mixing, reshuffling the deck of diversity. All these forces, selection, mutation, drift, flow, are constantly at work. Quiet, relentless, shaping life in slow, almost imperceptible shifts. They don't aim, they don't strive, they simply occur. But add enough time, millions of years, and what began as a small adjustment can result in the emergence of a whole new species. This brings us to one of the most elegant concepts in evolutionary biology: speciation. Speciation is the moment when a population splits into two distinct groups that can no longer interbreed. It's not always sudden. Often, it's like the slow pulling apart of two continents. Invisible day to day, but undeniable over time. Imagine a group of primates living on the edge of a shifting forest. Some move north, where the trees are thinner, some stay behind. In the north, resources are different. Predators are different. Weather is harsher. Slowly, traits that help in that environment become more common. Maybe larger size, thicker fur, a different way of communicating. Back in the original group, life continues along its own path. Over thousands of generations, the two groups accumulate enough differences that they can no longer interbreed, even if they meet again. At that point, they are no longer two parts of one species. They are two species, not by declaration, but by divergence. This process has played out countless times across Earth's history. It's how we got whales from land mammals, birds from dinosaurs, and yes, humans from ancestral apes. But what about the details? What exactly changed that allowed our ancestors to walk away from the trees? The fossil record, though imperfect, offers clues. One of the earliest known hominins is Sahelanthropus chadensis. a small-brained creature who lived around 7 million years ago in Africa. Its skull, though primitive, shows hints of bipedalism. The foramen magnum, the hole through which the spinal cord passes, is positioned in a way that suggests upright posture. Not a sprinting human, but a quiet shift. Then came Australopithecus afarensis, around 3.5 million years ago. Lucy's species, small-bodied, long-armed, but with pelvis and leg bones built for walking, still at home in the trees but experimenting with the ground. Around 2.5 million years ago, Homo habilis emerged. Handyman. With a slightly larger brain and evidence of tool use. Then Homo erectus, standing taller, travelling farther, fire, migration, innovation. And finally, about 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens stepped into the story. Not with a bang, but with the soft footprint of complexity, art, burial, language, a sense of self so vivid that we began to wonder not just how we lived, but why. And through it all, our primate cousins continued their own paths. Chimpanzees developed social strategies as intricate as any political drama. Bonobos built societies centered on peace and play. Orangutans mastered solitude and patience. None evolved into humans, because they were never meant to. We share a history, but we are not chapters in the same book. We are books in the same library, bound in different covers, written in different tongues, but pulled from the same ancient shelf. But evolution, for all its elegant simplicity, isn't without its oddities. There are edge cases, anomalies, little puzzles tucked into the margins of the natural world, where the rules still hold, but the results make you blink a little slower. Take, for instance, convergent evolution, when unrelated species living in similar environments develop similar traits: sharks and dolphins, bats and birds, octopuses and human-like eyes. It's as if the world whispers the same problem into different ears and receives similar answers written in different dialects of DNA. In the primate world, convergent traits show up too. Capuchin monkeys, small, New World primates, are startlingly intelligent. They use tools, solve problems, even wash their food. They're not closely related to apes, yet their behaviour mirrors ours in ways that feel oddly familiar. This tells us something humbling. Given enough time, intelligence, like wings, or eyes, or opposable thumbs, can evolve more than once. It's not uniquely ours. It's just rare. Another wrinkle in the story is mosaic evolution. The idea that not all traits evolve at the same pace. Our ancestors didn't wake up one day with big brains, upright posture and language skills. Those things arrived in pieces. Bipedalism came long before tool use. Smaller canine teeth appeared before complex speech. Some traits lingered, others leapt forward. Evolution is more like a collage than a sculpture. Bits and layers, shapes and shadows stitched together by time and survival. And then there are the ghosts, species we only know from fragments. A molar here, a sliver of jawbone there. The Denisovans discovered not in a forest or cave system, but from a single finger bone and a bit of DNA found deep in Siberia. We don't know what they looked like, but their genes live on, particularly in the peoples of Oceania and parts of Asia. Their story isn't told in bones, but in blood. They're part of our ancestry, even if we can't picture their faces. And that's one of the most haunting truths about human evolution. We didn't outlast the others because we were better. We just survived. By luck. By timing. By some fragile chain of choices and chances that happened to hold. We shared the world with at least 6 other human species, all walking upright, all making tools, some even burying their dead. And now we are alone. We're the last branch of a once busy tree, but the roots are still shared, the echoes are still loud. In labs and field sites, scientists continue to untangle this branching story. They analyse fossilised footprints, they scan skulls with lasers, they sequence ancient genomes letter by letter. And still, the question comes, Why didn't monkeys become us? And the answer, again and again, is a soft shrug of science. Because evolution doesn't work that way. Because they became what they needed to be. Because we became something else. Because every species alive today is the result of a different solution to the same question. How shall I live here? And even now, evolution hasn't stopped. It never does. Our bodies are still adapting. Our brains are still shifting. Some scientists believe we're getting taller, others that we're trading brain power for energy efficiency. Our pinky toes, our wisdom teeth, our appendix. They whisper stories of what used to be useful and what now just is. Even cultural evolution, the way ideas, beliefs and behaviours change over time, is shaping us. We pass on more than just genes. We pass on knowledge, language, music, ritual. We evolve not just biologically, but symbolically. And one of the strangest symbols we carry is the persistent image of a monkey turning slowly, inevitably, into a man. You've probably seen the illustration. A lineup of hunched figures growing taller, straighter, more civilized. It's tidy, comforting, wrong. Evolution doesn't walk in a straight line. It meanders, it loops, it experiments. The truth looks less like a march and more like a wildfire, spreading in all directions, igniting some paths, extinguishing others. So let's rewrite that image. Not a queue of ancestors, not a staircase, but a vast leafy tree, with humans on one limb, chimps on another, gibbons, macaques, baboons, each with their own branch, and down near the roots, the shared beginnings, the silent forest, the first spark of primates stretching into the light. This isn't just science, it's humility. It's seeing ourselves as part of something older, wider, less obsessed with who's ahead, and more in love with who's alive. Because in the end, evolution is not about who wins, it's about who fits, who lasts, who continues. And the monkeys, those laughing, leaping, clever creatures are still here. Because they fit, not despite us, not instead of us, alongside us, carving their own quiet path through the canopy of time. To understand how we came to understand evolution, we need to do a little evolving of our own, not in body, but in thought. Because the idea that life could change over time is not a modern one. It has always flickered, quietly, in the back of the human mind. The ancient Greeks wondered. Anaximander of Miletus, around 2500 years ago, speculated that humans may have come from fish, creatures born in water, adapting slowly to the land. He had no fossils, no microscopes, just observation and imagination. But even then, the idea was there. Life changes. Later, in Rome, the poet and philosopher Lucretius wrote of a world shaped by nature, not gods, of creatures that rose and fell based on their fitness, a kind of poetic prelude to natural selection written long before Darwin. But these were whispers. In the centuries that followed, the dominant view was one of fixity, that life was made once and for all unchanging. In the great medieval chain of being, everything had its place, from angels to worms, from lions to peasants, set in stone, ordained. Change was not part of the story, and to suggest otherwise was to pull at the very threads of order. Still, nature was persistent. Fossils began to speak, not all at once, not loudly, but enough to make some wonder. In the 17th and 18th centuries, naturalists across Europe started cataloguing life. Plants, animals, bones, beetles. They noticed patterns, similarities between species, oddities in anatomy. Why did whales have bones that looked like fingers? Why did birds have wings they never used? Why did embryos of fish, chickens and humans all look strangely alike? These questions stirred. In 1809, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck proposed one of the first full theories of evolution. He believed organisms could change during their lifetimes and pass those changes to their offspring. A giraffe stretches its neck to reach high leaves. Its baby inherits a longer neck. This idea, inheritance of acquired traits, was elegant but ultimately wrong. Still, Lamarck deserves a kind whisper in history, because he was one of the first to say, out loud, that life was not fixed, that species could transform. Then came Charles Darwin. In 1831, a young Darwin boarded the HMS Beagle for what would become a 5-year journey around the world. He collected specimens, he sketched finches, he marvelled at armadillos and fossils and coral reefs. But it was in the Galapagos Islands that a seed took root. He noticed that finches on different islands had different beaks, each shape suited to the food available. Thick beaks for nuts, long, slender ones for insects. They were all finches. But something had shifted. Darwin began to see a pattern. Not divine tinkering, but natural pressures. He spent the next 2 decades refining his ideas, gathering evidence, questioning himself. In 1859, he published On the Origin of Species. The book landed like a stone in still water, and the ripples have never stopped. In it, Darwin laid out a mechanism, natural selection. Variation exists within populations. Some traits help individuals survive and reproduce. Those traits are passed on. Over time, the population changes. There was no design, no hierarchy, just adaptation. It was a quiet revolution. Not everyone welcomed it. Religious leaders were outraged. Scientists were skeptical. The public was fascinated and confused. Caricatures appeared. Darwin with an ape's body. Monkeys in Parliament. The phrase "descended from apes" became a kind of mocking shorthand. But Darwin had never said humans came from monkeys. He wrote that humans and apes shared a common ancestor. A branch, not a descent. Still, the damage was done. The misconception spread, and with it, discomfort. Because if humans were not divine exceptions but animals with cousins, then what did that say about our souls? It took decades for Darwin's ideas to gain scientific traction. By the early 20th century, scientists had rediscovered the work of Gregor Mendel, a monk who studied pea plants and figured out the basics of genetic inheritance. His work had been overlooked, quietly gathering dust in forgotten